If you've ever explained something clearly, carefully, thoughtfully, and still watch learners struggle to use it, I want to start by saying this. That experience is not a sign that you're bad at teaching. This is one of the most confusing and frustrating moments for experienced experts. You do everything right. You break the idea down, you give context, you anticipate the questions. Your learners follow along. They nod. They say that makes sense. And yet, when it's time to actually apply what they've learned, they hesitate. They stall. They second guess themselves. They don't move. And you're left thinking, if they understood it, why can't they use it? That question is what we're unpacking today. One of the most common assumptions in course design is that clear expectations create learning. It's an understandable assumption. Clarity matters. Confusing explanations absolutely make learning harder. But clarity alone is not what produces learning. And this is where many well-intentioned courses quietly fall short because they optimize for understanding, not for capability. Understanding feels productive. It feels reassuring. It feels like progress. But understanding and learning are not the same thing. Let's slow this down. When you explain something well, learners can recognize the idea. They can follow the logic. They can see why it makes sense. And they can even repeat it back to you. That is understanding. But learning, the kind that actually changes behavior, that shows up later. It shows up when someone has to decide what to do without a script. When they face a real situation and ask themselves, okay, now what? That moment is very different from listening to an explanation. This all sounds a little abstract, so I'm going to ground it in an example from my own life. I took Spanish in high school for 3 years. I got good grades in Spanish, never anything less than a B. Can I speak Spanish fluently today? No. Can I speak Spanish at all? Also, no. I did great in Spanish class in high school because the mechanics made sense to me. I understood it. But when it came to using Spanish outside of a test, I hadn't actually learned it. From the expert's perspective, this gap is easy to miss because once you understand something deeply, using it feels automatic. You don't remember what it felt like to hesitate. You don't remember not knowing which choice mattered most. So it's natural to assume that if someone understands the idea, they're ready to apply it. But for learners, understanding is often the starting point, not the finish line. They haven't built confidence using that information yet. This is why courses that explain things very clearly can still fail to change behavior. They do a great job reducing confusion, but they don't necessarily prepare learners for uncertainty. And uncertainty is where learning actually happens. Learning requires choosing. It requires judgment. It requires risk. Explaining something clearly does not teach someone how to act when there's no clear answer. This creates a very common pattern. Learners consume the lesson. They feel informed. They feel productive. But when it's time to act, they hesitate. When they hesitate, they often assume the problem is them. They think, I probably need to rewatch this. I must not understand it well enough yet. I'm not ready. So they go back to the explanation. They consume more. They take more notes. They watch again, and the cycle continues. More understanding, no movement. From the course creator side, this can be incredibly frustrating because the content is good. The explanations are clear. So the instinct is to explain more. Add more examples, clarify further, say it in a different way. And while that feels responsible, it usually doesn't solve the problem because the issue isn't missing information. It's the course stops at understanding. And where learners usually get stuck isn't during the explanation. It's later, when they're on their own, trying to decide what matters most in real time. That's the moment most courses don't really address. And that's where confidence is built or lost, which usually happens next is quiet. Learners don't say they're confused. They don't ask better questions. They simply don't act. And from the outside, it looks like disengagement, when what's really happening is that action feels too risky without guidance. This is not a small distinction. It's a fundamental difference in how learning works. And it's one of the hardest things for experts to see from inside of their own expertise. Because explaining is what you're good at. It's visible, it's familiar, it feels like teaching. Designing learning that leads to capability requires a different lens, one that focuses less on what makes sense and more on what helps someone act. If you're listening to this and realizing, my course explains things really well, but learners still struggle to apply them, that doesn't mean your teaching is weak. It means the course explains ideas clearly, but stops short of helping learners act on them. And recognizing that difference is a turning point. This is also where many course creators start to feel stuck because explaining more doesn't help, but they're not sure what else to do. They know something is missing, but they can't quite see it. That's not a failure of effort or intelligence. It's a limitation of perspective. Once you know the answer, it's very hard to remember what it felt like not to. This is why designing learning that actually changes behavior, is difficult to do alone. Not because you lack insight, but because seeing the gap between understanding and capability requires distance from your own expertise. That's where guided support matters. Not to give you more content, but to help you design from the moment where learners have to act. That's exactly the kind of work we focus on inside Confident Course Design. If this video helped you name something you've been feeling but couldn't quite articulate, take that seriously. You're not doing it wrong. You've just reached the point where explanation alone isn't enough. Thanks for spending this time with me. I'll see you in the next video.